So here we have a door which is in need of some serious adjustments. You start by working his way around the edge. So we've got a booklet here which fits in most of the way around, and it's the same story on this side. It's a bit tighter there, and then it gets incredibly loose there. There's quite a large gap, and hopefully we're going to try and sort this out in this video. That's no longer what I consider to be a weather-tight seal. We can fit quite a few tools in. It's like the San Andreas fault. So we'll have a look inside and see what the problem is. So here we are inside, we're looking at the hinges. This hinge pin was actually raised up. There is a bit of a gap there, and it's pretty much the same story on the base. It's worse on the base than anywhere. And also the upper hinge has the gap, so I think in order to remedy this problem we're going to have to take the hinge pins out, which means removing this little plate here and getting a punch, and with a good tap the hinge pins should come out. So we're going to remove them, take the door off, and see if we can tighten these hinges up, and then perform any adjustments a bit later on in the video and hopefully realign it considerably better. So with the hinge pin removed, we can get to the screws to tighten this up. It will actually slide up and down, so I'm just going to replace it in the lowest setting. There seems to be a mark where it was, where it's been all this time, so I'll put it back to that. So I've just removed this screw from up here, and the problem is as I'm tightening they just seem to be turning round constantly. So we get to the point of tension and then it'll go click and release, which is a bit frustrating. So I've got a little solution in mind. As there's insufficient plastic for the screw to successfully bite, I thought about putting a roll plug in. I've got the lower one here in, and we'll put one in the top and see how that goes. Okay, this is what I've done to eradicate the problem. We just pushed the roll plugs through there, and we've swapped out the screws. This is one of the old screws, it's got a cutting edge, it's designed to cut. So we've swapped it out with a very marginally thicker screw, and hasn't got the cutting edge, so when it comes across the roll plug it doesn't try to turn it, it just screws into it. So we've now got all three, and they are nice and secure. They do actually slide up and down, so that adjustment may be required, but hopefully not. You're going to need screws with the same diameter head as you need to be pretty close to the original. I'll just do a quick comparison. So I've got the original screw on the right and the replacement on the left, and you can perhaps see the heads are the same size. That's essential. They are in fact a very similar length. The replacements are just marginally longer, and it makes no difference as we've got sufficient room for the screws to go in. You have to bear in mind there's a metal spacer there. So now I've got all three in and nice and snug and secure. I'll have a go at reinstating the door. So we've now got the door refitted, and we're unsure if this has been adjusted actually, but we've run into a bit of an issue. You can see we're closing at the lower half of the door, and then when we get here, hopefully you can see it in the camera, the latch there is just fouling. But when we look at the top of the door, you can see it's well out of level, so an adjustment's required. So we'll work on that. We need to effectively lower the door ever so slightly there. It could have been adjusted due to the hinges being loose. So before I make any adjustments, I just want to check everything is nice and tight. That one looks to be tight, and it indeed is. I'll just go around the frame, tightening everything up. So I've just gone round the door frame, and I did find these two screws here were very loose, so they got nipped up. If it's slightly depressing the plastic, you know it's tight enough without bothering. I also put a slight bit of more tension on these, and the ones on the base are for good measure, even though they are less likely, well, they're not likely at all to affect the alignment. So I haven't made any other adjustments bar tightening things, and we're instantaneously in a better place, albeit there is room for improvement. The door's still noticeably out of square. That's a little marker point effectively. You can see we're in a different place on the left hand side. So what we'll do, we'll get into this adjustment here. I'll just show you how to remove this cover. The cover's held on with these two screws. Just undo them, and the cover will just come off the other side. Also, there is a hidden screw for the pin. If you get a pin which won't move, I'll show you where that is. This is the grub screw which locks the pin in place. As the pin's down there, there's a groove in the pin and it locks it in place. This was the only one I had to loosen on this door. The other two came off no problem, so we'll have to take the plates off and nip them up to keep the pins in place. So once again, I've tightened all three of these up. There's 6 screws there, 1 inch, 2 inch, and the lower hinge. So without making any adjustments, just through tightening various loose screws up, we're now in a considerably better place. We'll just check our work with a spirit level, as I think further adjustments may be necessary. We've got the spirit level at the top, and I think there's just room for ever some marginal adjustment, or we could maybe just be happy at that. So I can now see the screws. I'll just start at the top. See, this bolt's got so much thread, so if we go that way, the right hand side of the door is going to lift, and the opposite applies by turning it that way. So it's clockwise will lift the door up this way, and anti-clockwise will do the opposite. You can see it's probably out of alignment anyway, because there's a good chunk of thread showing there, a little bit less thread there, and when we get to the bottom, even less thread showing there. So we'll just make our little adjustment and try and get it perfect. So I've opened the door because it's going to put it in a different place in the frame. So we've got the door free floated, and I'm very happy that the bubble is in between the two lines with the spirit level resting on the top. There is scope for marginal adjustment on the hinges. We just turn towards the plus clockwise to bring it in a little tighter. Just go in small increments, and then we'll just check the door against the weather strip. You can see it's a lot tighter than it was. I really want it so the door's just pushing up against the weather strip all the way down. So we're nearly there at the top, and the middle satisfactory, and at the bottom there's just a tiny little gap to take up. So I'll proceed to do that. So I've tightened the top up marginally, and then we got to the middle. I left that alone originally until I realised right at the bottom the screw is actually missing. So I tightened the middle up and the top, and it's just taken the lower of the door in. So I'm quite happy with that. The door's now butting up against the weather strip. So now we're going to draw our attention to this side. We seem to be in a better place at the bottom, and then as we get nearer the top, we actually have a gap appearing, which is a bit alarming, but we'll see what we can do to improve on that. So adjustment on the handle side of the door is basically These will move. We just loosen that screw and move them inwards, and there are 3 of them to do. Firstly, I check that every screw is as tight as it can be within reason, and then we'll just gently move them all in increments. I now need to move the top one first, so I think I'll maybe move that first. And the door seems to close a bit too easily and lock too easily, so I'll move that second a little. So I'm going to move this one the most, that one a little bit more, and a very marginal adjustment on the lower one. So with it being a big gap, I'm going to go all the way and we'll just have a quick check with the drawer, see if it works. Okay, I seem to have finished here. We've replaced the covers. There's just one final thing to check, and that is that your door is lockable inside and out. If it isn't, I find if we just back things off a little and keep trying until it is, and then you'll find that your door will lock. So we'll close the door on this job. Many thanks for watching, and why not subscribe to learn of more repair possibilities.